Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending where you are. So today here in the afternoon over the weekend, we are here to discuss some topical issues in our continent. We have here with us our brother, Pan-Africanist Kwame Gonza. Welcome, Kwame.
Oh, thank you very much, Mahlet. Thank you for having me today, and greetings to all the people who are watching Connect Africa. It's very, very important that we continue to inform ourselves about what is happening to our continent. Like they say, we are Africans and Africa is our business.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you very much for having me today.
Indeed, it's a pleasure. We always have a pleasure to have you here, and of course, benefit from your analysis, from your Pan-African perspective, the way you look at things, what's happening in the continent. So the US-Africa Summit, the second US-Africa Summit is approaching, which is going to be held in the middle of this month from 13th to 15th. So it's this one is the second one since the Obama administration that was in 2014. A lot has happened in the past 8 years. All those countries who have business. With Africa, of course, Africa is the source of everything. So nobody wants to leave alone this country or this continent. So we had China, Russia, India, Turkey, I think also Japan, all these countries have had their Japan, Africa, Turkey, Africa, all those kinds of summits. So is the US, the summit that US now has called, or rather, shall we say, summoned our leaders to have this summit in Washington, is just another, race for the US to catch up what it has missed from the continent from various angles. What is it about? Of course, there are certain agendas on the table, please go ahead and tell us what's your take on this.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mahlet. It's very important, like we said, to continuously look at our continent, and it's very good that we're having these conversations, because to be honest, these conversations are not being had anywhere on the continent. We have an African media which is focusing on very different things. People are running in different directions, but when there is actually geopolitical events that are happening today that are so much important that we should not, our media and civil society as Africans should not afford and cannot afford not to pay attention to, cannot afford to ignore. But you see that from time to time, our media doesn't pay attention to it. And of course, for reasons which are understandable, that our media in certain cases is not controlled by us, apart from a few countries, like maybe you can talk of Ethiopia and a few other countries like maybe Zimbabwe or something. But majority of the media is being controlled from outside. And so they don't pay attention to these things. If they pay attention and they know what is going on, then they don't want Africans to know what is going on, that there is things that they are, that are important, that Africans should pay, attention to, because these events are consequential. The future of the continent, the future of the Africans as a people, depend on it. Imagine that if the Africans knew what was happening in Berlin in 1884, Africans would have prepared themselves, and we would have prepared ourselves during that time, because we would have known that Europeans are coming to colonize us. So it is very important that events like these, when they are happening, you are talking about US Africa Summit. We have had summits, numerous of them, as you have elaborated on them, China Africa Summit. Turkey Africa Summit. Turkey also comes and puts up, summits to summon Africa. India, okay, UK Africa Summit, Europe Africa Summit. So everyone wants to have summit. I think there's been also some Arab Africa Summit, something like that. So everyone is putting up a summit. And these people is not because they love us. It's not because they like us so much or they want to contribute to our development. It is because they want to take care of their own people, their interests. And with that, I'll close in on the United States on this U.S. Africa Summit. The previous U.S. Africa Summit, I think they have not produced much when you are talking about the tangible benefits, apart from what what Obama did. He came up with the AGOA, but what followed the AGOA or Africa, what is the full the AGOA is it Africa growth? I think Africa growth and what? Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah,
Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was brought by Obama, which is a bill that was passed by Obama. But what happened after that Africa Growth and Opportunity Act? What followed was Obama coming to destroy Libya, an economy which was very advanced on the African continent, one of the most developed. And they even stole, the United States went as far as to steal the gold that was present in the central bank in Libya. So you can see that these summits have not produced any tangible benefits for the Africans, apart from narrative that continues to be paraded around, sort of like aid is important to Africa. Now, this summit is coming when there is a lot of things that are going on in the world. When the United States is confronting China, we need to pay close attention to that. This summit is coming when the United States is interfering all over the African continent and disturbing places like Ethiopia. You have seen how it tried to interfere in the in the negotiations and the agreements that that have been coined, that have been achieved by the African Union, to try to stop the rebels in the northern part of the country in Tigray. You have seen the United States putting military bases all over. So these are the events that are surrounding this, summit on the African continent on itself. And also this summit is coming amidst people starting to wake up, especially in West Africa, where France is being rejected. Okay. People in Mali, Burkina Faso, you have seen in Guinea, people are rejecting this colonialism. But on top of that, also, when we look at externally what is happening within the imperialistic camp itself, I'm talking about the United States, Britain, and Europe, and all the other countries in the West. It is coming when they are in confrontation with Russia, at a period when they are in confrontation with Russia, because they have been looking at Russia as an obstacle, actually, since the 1940s. Since then, actually, the advent of the 19th and the 20th century, Russia has been looked at as a rogue, sort of a rogue brother, because Russians are also Europeans, but they are sort of like a rebellious brother who rebelled against the European doctrine of colonization. And so instead, the Russians came and started aiding the people who were fighting against, this European colonialism. And so ever since the 19th and the 20th century, the Russians have never been, forgiven. So that is why you see they are always, on Russia's back and hunting Russia down and trying to demonize Russia, because Russia has always been on the side of of the colonized, the oppressed people. And just to tell you also, during the Berlin Conference in 1884, Russia actually was there at the Berlin Conference, but did not get any, Russia did not get any colonies. So Russia went on, to oppose the doctrine, the strategy, the policy of colonization of a people. And so you can see that Russia was at confrontation in Vietnam when there was a war in Vietnam. Russia was on the side of northern Vietnam. You can see in Korea also, Russia was on the side of North Korea. You can see in China when during the Chinese Revolution, Russia was if the Soviet Union did not help China during the Chinese Revolution, China would not, Mao Zedong, the Chinese Communist Party would not have won. That was so. Russia is being confronted, and when you come to Africa also itself, Russia was here very much supporting all the revolutionary parties and revolutionary forces on the African continent, in Angola, in Zimbabwe. We have recently even seen pictures where Vladimir Putin was in Tanzania trying to train, the Zimbabwe forces, the ZANU-PF. So Russia was present in countries like Ghana. So even helping to transfer technology during that time, it was called the Soviet Union, of course, and giving a lot of loans which were favorable. Even when you read Nkrumah's book, Neocolonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism, Nkrumah mentions the aid terms which were given to African countries and poor countries and global South countries by the Soviet Union. The terms of aid, they were very favorable always, and even the interest rate that was given on those loans, was always favorable. Now, I've delayed on Russia because it is very important to understand that these historical events, they matter to what is happening today. It is important for us as Africans to understand the value of where we are coming from, because it is where we are coming from that is shaping where we are, that has shaped where we are today. It is yesterday's events that shaped where we are today. And what we do today is what is going to be history yesterday. Okay, it is what is going to be history tomorrow, and then the future is going to be shaped by what we are doing, today. So it is important for us to look back and understand. So Russia, that has been its footprint. So when they are demonizing Russia or China, it's important for us to go back in history. History will tell us the nature of Africa's relationship with Russia or China, and then we will be in a much better position for us to decide who should be our partners going forward, development partners. When we are talking about development partners as the African continent, who should we look up? Who should we look at or up to first, to consider as development partners? Russia has been in Mali. Okay, you remember that when the government came in Mali and they were able to overthrow that, to overthrow a French-backed president, that they invited the Wagner Group from Russia. So all these events, they have contributed to the aggression that is being, and the pressure that is being applied onto Russia, because Russia came to, to continue, to help Africa, because France wanted to overthrow the government. The government that is being, led by, President Goita, in Mali, which government has proved to be, Pan-African in its nature. It has proved to be pro-people in its nature. So when Russia came to be able to protect these people, then the United States came up with a bill, which is called the HR 7311. HR 7311, which is called a bill for countering malign Russian activities in Africa. So this bill was to be passed, in the House of Congress in the United States. So the bill they claim is to counter Russia in Africa, as if Africa doesn't know what to do. And people like the Minister of Foreign Relations in South Africa, Madame Naleda Pandor, she stood up against even this bill, even President Cyril Ramaphosa, and said if this bill passes in Congress in the United States, it will be very unfortunate. it will be disrespectful to Africans, and we don't like it that somebody tells us what to do. So all these are colonial tactics. So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to lay a background so that we can understand what this summit is all about. What is the purpose of this summit? Now, amidst all this that is going on around the world, Russia, China, the United States has also come out of, it has just pulled out of Afghanistan. It pulled out of, of Afghanistan. I think it was last year or around the beginning of this year or last year. So it was a great a victory for the Afghan people, even though the United States and its European allies, its colonial allies, went ahead to seize money from the Afghani people, which is almost around 7 billion people, which is money that is needed. And this is theft, this is stealing. But because they're superpowers, then there's no one to condemn them. And the other leaders of the world are sort of maybe fearful. But I think China and Russia have condemned these acts, and they have called for the release of these funds. But the Afghani people were able to come out victorious. They were able to resist the United States for more than 20 years. And the Taliban, even though they were pushed out of power, they came back to power after 20 years. And the United States left that place while running from the place, and their planes and stuff. They were just rushing out of the place. And Afghanistan definitely has challenges. It is going to face a lot of challenges. But I think they are very strong people who have withstood. If they have withstood the pressure for the last 20 years, I think they will be able to hold it together with cooperation with other nations. So these are the problems which the United States is facing. But also, the whole of the United States and the Western world is facing tremendous challenges economically. When we go back to 2020, at the advent of the COVID-19, we saw that these economies started shrinking. Actually, the economies in the Western world had started shrinking as far as 2018, because you remember there was an economic depression in 2008, a very, very big economic depression in the Western world. That economic depression, which almost destroyed the whole world economy, whereby more than 35 million jobs were destroyed by this economic depression. So another economic depression happened in 2018, because these economic depressions, they normally happen in a period of 10 years. So this 2020, it was just a sign, it was an exacerbation of that, economic depression that happened in 2018 again. And so the economies in the Western world have been reeling. And so that is why you see they started the war on China. They started the economic war on China, because their economies are depressed. You go to states like Detroit, which was an industrial hub, has become, deindustrialized. It has become like Iraq. The place is dirty. It is like a ghosty town. You go to streets like in California and Los Angeles, people are sleeping on the streets. You see, homelessness is skyrocketing. So they are facing a lot of problems. And when you go to Europe itself also, you see the yellow jackets on the streets in France, you see. So you go to Britain, the economy is depressed. Italy, these were the first people to get problems. Italy, Spain, Greece, in very, very bad shape. So what is happening in the Western world is that there has been a lot of mismanagement, misuse of resources, because they thought that they will be here forever, and they can always depend on other people and colonize other people and exploit other people to keep themselves going. And so they have gone on to mismanage, have bloated, military budgets, because these bloated military budgets should be used to suffocate other people, intimidate, and suffocate other people, and take the resources by force, as we have seen in Iraq. We have seen in the whole of Middle East, and Iran has resisted them. We've seen in Afghanistan, and so what they see now, as you have seen that the African Command, they have been attempting, they are attempting to establish, an office in Zambia, is that they want to secure Africa's resources for themselves. As you have seen, countries like Zambia, it has huge deposits of copper on the border, actually on its border, with the Democratic Republic of Congo. There's a lot of copper around there. So that is the purpose of establishing this. And then there's a lot of lithium, in Zimbabwe, which is also, in proximity is bordering Zambia. So they are trying to secure these resources for their industry. As you are seeing that transport now is evolving. This transport system is evolving, that electric cars are taking over. So electric cars, they are running on motors, electric motors, and they need copper, to make these motors. So it is industrial purposes that you see that they are establishing all this machinery. Now, the summoning of the African leaders, to this US Africa Summit is to accelerate that process, because they are shifting their military, activities now from the Middle East onto the African continent in order to push out Russia. On the other side, I showed you that they have a bill in Congress. They are trying to demonize Russia. And then on the other side, they are demonizing China with massive propaganda. Now, on this side, the Africa Summit, they are trying to coerce the African leaders and sometimes to intimidate them, sometimes outright corrupt them and buy them out, so that they can continue to release, or they can even accelerate the process of releasing Africa's resources to go and rebuild, actually, not only to build, because Africans have already contributed immensely, hugely contributed to the construction of European civilization, whether Europe and the United States. We contributed, in the 19th, starting actually from the 17th century, when they appeared on the African continent. They took our bodies, they took our, mineral resources in the 19th century, 20th century. They have continued to do the same. So we built, now they destroyed, and they are misused these resources. And the tactics now which they want to employ is to continue to use the same means of exploitation and rebuild what they have destroyed. Because like I've shown you, in Europe, the economies are very depressed. They have been shrinking. In the United States, when you go and look at the economic data of this year, the United States in the first quarter, the economy shrank by, I think, by around 4.6. In the second quarter, it continued to shrink by, I think, around 1.4, 1.3, somewhere there. And even in the third quarter, the economy continued to shrink. So they are shrinking. Even when you go to Britain, the situation is the same. When you go to France, during even the COVID period, the economy of France was shrinking by almost 9%, 6%. So these are the reasons for the calling of the US Africa Summit. And we see disagreements also between the United States and France, and now Germany in Europe, because everyone now, to a certain level, they try to take care of their own business. Okay, so the United States, even to a certain level, it bullies, Europe, to a certain level. That's why you have seen things like encouraging them to boycott the gas from Russia. And even some people have said that the United States has been responsible for blowing up the Nord Stream 2 and the Nord Stream 1, the pipelines which are supposed to bring gas to Europe from Russia. So it encourages them, and then they will continue to suffer, like that. So so we have that scenario there, but the whole strategy is that they want to continue to employ what Dick Cheney, who was the vice president during George Bush's time, called the strategy of maximum extraction, that they want to continue to extract maximally the resources from Africa and prevent Russia from being there to help Africa to defend itself, or China to be here to give better terms, not the best terms, but China has been able to give us, better terms than what the West has been giving us, far better times, or 1,000 times much more better terms than what the West has given us. So they don't want this. They want us to be completely vulnerable people, completely helpless people, so that they can use this strategy, which I said that Dick Cheney, coined, the strategy of maximum extraction. They will continue to extract the resources out of the African continent. So this is what this summit is about. This summit is not about making things better for Africa. It's not about improving the relations, because like Nkrumah said in one of his writings, Nkrumah said that it is far easier for a proverbial camel to pass through a needle's eye than an erstwhile colonial, administration to give any constructive political advice to a territory which was recently a colony. So let me repeat that. Nkrumah said that it is far easier for a proverbial camel. Actually, he was paraphrasing the Bible, which says it is far easier for a camel to go through a needle's eye than a rich man to go to heaven. So what Nkrumah was saying, So what Nkrumah was saying, that it is far easier for a camel, a proverbial camel, to go through a needle's eye than a colonial, nation to give advice to a once colony, a colonial territory. You see, so what he's saying, that the imperialists, they cannot give, any wise political counsel to the territories which they want to exploit, because their purpose for being here is not human rights, is not to give correct political counsel or to develop the colonial territories. Their purpose is to make their lives better, to exploit. And what is ironic is that they have exploited not only the once colonial territories, but they went home also and exploited their people. And this is the danger of capitalism, that they went home and exploited their people. And then when their people are complaining that you are over exploiting us, and you are applying, these policies which are not improving the Western world, even itself, then they want to divert the attention. They want to divert the attention that they are around the world fighting some holy cause of human rights and freedom and liberty. They are spreading some sort of holy, mission. They are on some sort of holy mission. So, but all this is to diverge, to put a divergency and diverge the attention of their people, so that the people will not demand what belongs to them. We have seen skyrocketing income inequality. A few people, they have 10%, they own 90% of the wealth, even in the Western world, with the focus on the United States, of course. 10% of the people in the United States, they own 90% of the wealth, and 90% of the people, they own the remaining 10%. So this income inequality, causes a lot of conflict and backlash, and I think past people like Ray Dalio, who's a billionaire investor, has written about this in one of his books. The book is called Understanding Principles for Dealing with, Principles for Understanding How to Deal with the Changing World Order. And one of the problems he mentions that is facing the Western world is the income inequality, increasing income inequality. There is a very huge income inequality that is causing a lot of problems. And that is what led to the election of people like Trump. So these problems, when they, and I mentioned in California and Los Angeles on the streets, the increasing homelessness. If you go to the internet, you can go even on YouTube and check it out for yourself, and check, you pin it in, you type it in, and you see, just type in homelessness in California. You will see people sleeping on streets, in tents, plenty people, a lot of people on streets, queues and queues on people all over, full streets. So these problems, they don't want to confront them at home and take the wealth and redistribute it, so that people have, people feel that they are cared for, the wealth to be equitable. So they divert the people's attention, and which problem actually is temporary. What they are doing is a temporary, enterprise. What they are engaging in is a temporary, enterprise of pleasing the 10% at the expense of 90, of the 90%, and to divert the attention of the 90%. And the other thing is that this temporary, measure which they are employing, it will not be acceptable even on the African continent, because our population and understanding, has also grown as a people. This is the information age. This is what I mean, that we know what is going on in the world. We know the intentions of these people. But I think to some extent, they are naive. They think that we are going to stay in the 18th century or the 17th century forever, that we would not know what is going on in the world, which is out of this world. That right now we know what is going on in the world, and definitely we are bound to resist. And that is what you have seen in Mali. That is what you have seen, that is what you have seen in Burkina Faso. That is what you have seen in Guinea. That is what, that's the discontent that you are seeing that is going on all over the continent. Even in Ghana, we have seen this discontent start building up. So this, I think that is the trend which the African leaders have to be attentive to. They have to pay attention to this trend. They have to pay, the African leaders, as they're going to this summit, I think that they have to pay attention to the condition, to the temperature, or on the continent. What are the people saying on the continent? The one of the things which I was talking about is that as Africans, I think that when we are going to this summit, the leaders should go with certain demands. It is incumbent upon people like the chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Musa Faki, and the chairperson of the African Union, who is President Macky Sall, to come together before this summit and write down the position of the African continent, mobilize actually the African leaders on the continent, and write down that this is a position. However much African leaders are isolated when they go to Washington. Actually, I thought that this summit was going to be in Morocco, because there was talk of it being in Morocco at first. But when we go to Washington to this summit, they will isolate them to try to corner them. But they should stick to a position, an African position, and we should have demands. We should agree that Africa has reached a time for solving its own problems. And this is evidenced by what happened, in South Africa recently, whereby the African Union led peace negotiations, and the peace was able to come back to Ethiopia. Regardless of the challenges, which we face now, we know that, they are still trying to sabotage this, but it is the African Union which did this. And even in the Congo, the African Union has taken, that same, strategy, to approach the problem that we have in the Congo, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, that you see that Uhuru Kenyatta is there, you see that the East African community is there. It has started taking the responsibility. So I think that the African leaders need to stand on their feet and say, this is the direction where we want to take our continent. And we want to take care of our security all over the continent, not only in the East African region and the Horn of Africa, where leaders have stood up and said we are going to be responsible for our region. We don't want interference. Eritrea, Somalia, places like Uganda, the whole East Africa region has stood up and said we can take care of our business. We don't need you guys to start coming here and start bombing and destroy. We have seen what you have done in Afghanistan. We have seen what you have done in Iraq. We've seen what you did in Somalia in 1993, 1994. We saw what you did in Libya recently in 2011. We don't want that chaos to, you can't continue that chaos and bring it over here in East Africa and the Horn of Africa region. So I think that position needs to be, maintained and held by all African heads of state. And I think that it is the responsibility of the responsibility of the chairperson of the African Union Commission and the chairperson of the African Union, who is Musa Faki and under President Macky Sall of Senegal, that they have to come together to mobilize the continent and put them on the same page, put them on the same paper, that this is where we want the continent to go, because this is, honestly, this is the feeling of most of the African people on the continent.
Indeed, I agree with you, Brother Kwame. Thank you very much, really, to unfold all those background, where this summit is coming in the midst of all these things are happening. You have laid out the geopolitics battle on the continent. We have seen, the best example, and the recent example is Ethiopia, and then what's happening in West Africa, the defeat that they are facing, the resistance of, some of the Western African countries, which, by the way, led a couple of countries I think 3 countries from West Africa not to be invited in this summit. And I really, really love the background that you gave about Russia, how it has been bullied so far by the Western, led by the US, how it has been cornered, and how, the history of Russia in terms of standing with those invaded by the West. It's really, which can be actually a topic for another day. I really, really love, to delve into that. I'm sure our audience will benefit from that. And then the economic depression, which most of us do not pay attention that it's happening. There's actually a pattern that every decade it's happening. And when it's happening, something, has to happen to cover that in the world, again, led by the Western world. And then, the economic depression in their own countries over the exploitation, and then how they divert that. It's really, really important, the historical aspect, because, as you said, without yesterday, there's no present, and then there's no future. So it's really important to lay out those historical aspects, and then, to explain what's happening also presently. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed. I am sure that our audiences have also, we learn from this, because the main parts, the first and foremost, the main aim or the objective of such platform like this, Connect Africa and others, is to create awareness. We know that somewhere, whether it's 2 people, 3 people, it will awaken. It will, knowledge is power. Information is power.